The blood pounding in Flint O'Malley's ears drowned out every other sound, as the bull moose lowered its massive rack of antlers and charged straight at the orc woman gathering mushrooms near the forest edge. Without thinking, without a word, Flint planted himself between the enraged animal and the stranger, his arms spread wide as if his lean frame could somehow stop 2,000 pounds of fury. Time slowed to a crawl. He could see the whites of the moose's eyes, could smell the musky scent of its rage, could feel the ground trembling beneath his boots. Behind him, he heard a sharp intake of breath, a woman's voice speaking words in a language he did not understand. The moose was 5 strides away. 4, 3. Then it veered. The massive creature turned at the last possible second, crashing into the underbrush with such force that saplings snapped like kindling. Flint stood frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs, his hands still outstretched. Slowly he turned. The orc woman stared at him with eyes the color of amber, her green skin pale with shock. She stood a head taller than him, broad-shouldered and muscular, wearing leather armor that had seen better days. Small tusks protruded from her lower jaw, and her black hair was pulled back in a practical braid. She held a wicker basket full of mushrooms in one hand, the other resting on the hilt of a long knife at her belt. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said in accented but clear common tongue. Flint found his voice, though it came out shakier than he would have liked. "Probably stupid. Are you hurt?" She glanced down at herself as if surprised by the question. "No, the beast did not touch me." "Why did you do that?" It was a fair question, one Flint did not have a good answer for. His father had fought against orc raiders during the border wars 20 years ago. His neighbors would spit on the ground at the mere mention of orcs. He had been raised on stories of their brutality, their savagery, their hatred of humankind. Yet when he had seen her in danger, his body had moved before his mind could catch up. "I saw someone in trouble," he said simply. The orc woman studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a slight nod. "You have my thanks, human. May your gods watch over you." She turned to leave, moving with surprising grace for someone so large. Flint took a step forward, then stopped himself. What was he doing? She was an orc. She would not want his company, and he should not want hers. But something made him call out anyway. "Wait. That moose has been causing trouble for weeks. It is not safe to gather here alone." She paused, looking back over her shoulder. "I can take care of myself. I know. I saw the knife. But that moose is faster than you think, and meaner too. My farm is just over that hill. I have supplies, food. At least let me give you something for your trouble." The orc woman's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help me? I am orc." "Because you are hungry enough to risk gathering mushrooms in moose territory," Flint said. "And because you just thanked me instead of putting that knife through my ribs." A sound escaped her throat, something between a laugh and a snort. "Your ribs are safe, human. For now." She seemed to consider his offer, then sighed. "My name is Grusha, Flint O'Malley." Grusha followed him up the hill, keeping several paces behind. Flint could feel her eyes on his back, wary and watchful. He led her to his homestead, a modest affair consisting of a small log cabin, a barn, chicken coop, and several fields that he had cleared and planted over the past 2 seasons. It was not much, but it was his. "You live alone?" Grusha asked, her gaze sweeping over the property. "Yes. My father died 3 years ago. I inherited the land." "No wife?" Flint felt his cheeks warm. "No, not many women want to live this far out on the frontier. Too dangerous, they say." "They are probably right," Grusha said, but her tone was not unkind. He brought her inside the cabin, acutely aware of how sparse and simple everything was. A table, 2 chairs, a bed in the corner, shelves holding preserves and dried goods. A fireplace with a cooking pot. Nothing fancy, nothing decorative, just the basics needed to survive. Grusha set her basket on the table and looked around with interest. This is a good home, solid, warm. Thank you. Flint busied himself gathering supplies, pulling down a sack of flour, some salt pork, dried beans, and a jar of honey. Here, take these. Grusha stared at the pile of food. This is too much. Winter is coming. You will need it. I cannot pay you. I am not asking you to. She met his eyes, and for the first time he saw something other than wariness in her expression. Confusion, perhaps, or disbelief. Why do you do this? Flint thought about lying, about giving some noble reason or making himself sound better than he was. But something about Grusha made him want to tell the truth. Because it is the right thing to do. Because you are hungry and I have enough to share. Does there need to be another reason? Grusha was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out something small and wrapped in cloth. She set it on the table. Then I give you this. Fair trade. Flint unwrapped the cloth to reveal a carved wooden figure, no bigger than his thumb. It was a bird in flight, wings spread, every feather detailed with incredible precision. The craftsmanship was exquisite. You made this, he asked. Yes, in the long nights when there is nothing else to do. Grusha's voice was gruff, almost embarrassed. It is not much. It is beautiful, Flint said honestly. He looked up at her. Thank you. Something shifted in the air between them, some invisible barrier cracking just slightly. Grusha nodded and gathered up the food supplies, packing them carefully into her basket alongside the mushrooms. I should go, she said. Dark comes early now. Will you be all right getting back to wherever you are staying? I have survived worse than a walk through the woods, Grusha said, but she paused at the door. Flint O'Malley, you are a strange human. So I have been told. After she left, Flint sat at his table holding the carved bird, wondering what he had just done. Helping an orc, inviting her into his home. If anyone from the nearby settlement found out, there would be hell to pay. But he could not bring himself to regret it. There had been something in Grusha's eyes, a loneliness that mirrored his own. 3 days passed. Flint went about his usual routine, tending to his chickens, repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm, splitting firewood for winter. He told himself he was not looking for Grusha, was not listening for footsteps in the forest, was not disappointed when another day ended without seeing her. On the 4th day, he found a haunch of venison hanging from his barn door. There was no note, no message. But Flint knew who had left it. The meat was fresh, expertly butchered, more than he could eat before it spoiled. He spent the morning preserving it, smoking some and salting the rest, all the while thinking about the orc woman who had given him such a gift. A week later, he discovered his woodpile had doubled in size. Someone had cut and stacked cord after cord of firewood while he had been working in the fields. The cuts were clean, the work efficient and professional. Flint stood looking at the woodpile as the sun set, then called out to the darkening forest. I know you are out there, Grusha. You can come out if you want. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she emerged from between the trees, moving silently despite her size. She wore the same leather armor, the same wary expression. You did not have to do this, Flint said, gesturing at the wood. You gave me food. I pay my debts. It was a gift, not a debt. Grusha crossed her arms over her chest. Among my people, accepting charity is shameful. We work for what we receive. Then work with me, Flint said before he could stop himself. Winter is coming. I need help preparing the farm, and I imagine you could use a warm place to sleep and regular meals. Grusha's eyes widened slightly. You offer me work. Here. Yes, if you want it. Your neighbors will not like having an orc so close. My nearest neighbor is 5 miles away and he minds his own business. The settlement is even farther. No one needs to know." Grusha studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. "You are serious, completely. Why would you trust me? I could rob you, kill you in your sleep." "You could have done that already if you wanted to," Flint pointed out. "You know where I live. You have been here at night. I am still alive and my property is intact. Besides, I am a good judge of character, and I think you are a good person, Grusha." Something flickered across her face, an emotion too quick to identify. She looked away. "You know nothing about me. Then tell me. Stay for dinner at least. I just made stew." He could see her wavering, could see the loneliness and hunger warring with caution and pride. Finally, she nodded. "One meal. Then I decide." One meal turned into an evening of conversation. Flint learned that Grusha had been cast out from her clan 6 months ago for refusing to participate in a raid on a human village. She had argued that the humans in question were farmers, not soldiers, and that attacking them was dishonorable. Her clan leader had called her weak, corrupted by human sympathies. They had given her a choice: participate in the raid or leave forever. She had walked away. Since then, she had been living in the forest, hunting and foraging, avoiding both orc and human settlements. It was a hard, lonely existence, and Flint could hear the pain in her voice as she spoke of it. In turn, he told her about his own isolation, about how he had inherited a farm he barely knew how to run, about the long days and longer nights with no one to talk to, about how the settlement folks thought him odd for choosing to live so far from civilization. "We are both outcasts then," Grusha said quietly. "I suppose we are." She stayed that night, sleeping in the barn at her own insistence. But the next morning she was up before dawn, already working. Flint found her mending the chicken coop, her large hands surprisingly deft with hammer and nails. They fell into a routine. Grusha worked hard, never complaining, never shirking. She was stronger than any human Flint had ever met, capable of hauling loads that would have required 2 or 3 men. But she was also careful, almost gentle with the animals. The chickens seemed to like her, and his old draft horse, Clover, would nuzzle her shoulder when she brought him feed. In the evenings, they would eat together and talk. Sometimes Grusha would carve while they spoke, her knife moving with practiced ease. She made animals mostly: deer, rabbits, birds. Each one was a tiny masterpiece. Flint started a collection on his mantle. "Where did you learn to carve like that?" he asked one night. "My mother taught me." She said it was important to create beauty in a world full of ugliness. Grusha's expression grew distant. "She died when I was young. Raiders, human raiders." Flint set down his cup. "I am sorry." It was a long time ago, but her voice was tight with old pain. "My father fought in the border wars," Flint admitted. "He killed orcs, a lot of them from what I understand. He never talked about it much, but I know it haunted him." "Do you hate orcs? Because of what we did?" Flint looked at her, really looked at her. At the strength in her shoulders, the intelligence in her eyes, the careful way she held herself as if always ready to flee or fight. "I thought I did, or at least I thought I was supposed to. But then I met you, and everything I was told does not match what I see." "What do you see?" "Someone who works hard, who keeps her word, who creates beautiful things with her hands." He paused. "Someone I am glad to know." Grusha looked away, but not before Flint saw the emotion in her eyes. "You are strange, Flint O'Malley, very strange." The first snow came in early November, light flurries that dusted the ground like powder. Flint and Grusha had spent weeks preparing, stockpiling food and firewood, reinforcing the buildings against winter winds. The barn was snug and well insulated now, thanks largely to Grusha's efforts. But as the temperature dropped, Flint began to worry. The barn was shelter, yes, but it was not warm enough for the truly bitter cold that was coming. "Move into the cabin," he told Grusha one evening as they finished dinner. She looked up sharply. What? The barn will be too cold once the deep winter sets in. There is room in the cabin. You can sleep by the fire. That would not be proper. Proper? Flint could not help but laugh. Grusha, there is nothing proper about any of this. An orc working on a human farm, living in his barn, eating at his table. We are already well beyond proper. Then why make it worse? Because I do not want you to freeze to death out of some misplaced sense of propriety, Flint said bluntly. Please. I will sleep on one side of the room, you on the other. It will be fine. Grusha looked like she wanted to argue, but eventually she nodded. Very well, but only until spring. That night, Flint lay in his bed listening to Grusha breathe on the other side of the room. It felt strange having someone else in the cabin, strange but not unpleasant. The space felt less empty, less lonely. He found himself thinking about her more and more, about the way she laughed when one of the chickens did something particularly foolish, about the concentration on her face when she carved, about the rare moments when she would forget to be guarded and would smile, really smile, and her whole face would transform. These were dangerous thoughts. She was an orc. He was human. Their peoples had been at war for generations. Even if he could look past that, even if he could ignore the prejudices he had been raised with, what could possibly come of such feelings? And yet, as winter deepened, and they spent more and more time together in the close confines of the cabin, Flint found it increasingly hard to ignore the warmth in his chest when he looked at her. The blizzard hit in late December, a howling monster that lasted 3 days. Snow piled up past the windows, and the wind shrieked like a living thing. Flint and Grusha were trapped inside, unable even to reach the barn to tend to Clover and the chickens. On the second day, huddled close to the fire for warmth, Grusha told him about her childhood in the orc clans, about the harsh discipline, the constant training for war, the expectation that she would grow up to be a raider like her father and his father before him. I never wanted that life, she said quietly. I wanted to build things, not destroy them. I wanted to create, not kill. But in the clans, there is no place for such weakness. It is not weakness to want peace, Flint said. Try telling that to an orc warlord. Grusha stared into the fire. I always knew I did not fit. I was too soft, too sentimental. My clan tolerated me because I was strong, because I could fight when I had to, but they never truly accepted me. I know something about that, Flint said. Being the odd one, not fitting in. Grusha looked at him. You seem normal to me. That is because you are odd too, Flint said with a slight smile. We are a matched set. She laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. The sound filled the cabin like music. By the third day, the blizzard had passed, leaving the world buried in white. They dug their way out together, tunneling through drifts taller than Flint's head. Clover and the chickens had survived, cold but unharmed. The world seemed reborn, clean and pure under its blanket of snow. That night, as they sat by the fire, Grusha reached over and took Flint's hand. It was a simple gesture, almost casual, but it made his heart race. Thank you, she said, for everything, for your kindness, for seeing me as a person, not a monster. Flint squeezed her hand, feeling the calluses on her palm, the strength in her fingers. You were never a monster, Grusha. Never. She leaned closer, and for a moment Flint thought she might kiss him. His breath caught. But then she pulled back, releasing his hand, and the moment passed. We should sleep, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Tomorrow will be hard work, digging out the rest of the farm. Flint nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. Right, sleep. Good idea. But he lay awake for a long time that night, thinking about the warmth of her hand in his. Winter wore on. January gave way to February, and the cold showed no signs of relenting. But inside the cabin, something was changing. The air between Flint and Grusha felt charged, electric. They found excuses to touch, to stand close, to catch each other's eyes across the room. Flint knew he was falling in love with her. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. He had never felt this way about anyone, had never known that his heart could feel so full and so fragile at the same time. But he said nothing. How could he? What right did he have to burden Grusha with his feelings when she had already lost so much? She had found safety here, a place to rest and recover from the pain of her exile. He would not risk ruining that by making things complicated. So he kept his feelings locked away and tried to be content with her friendship. Then came the night of the wolves. Flint woke to the sound of chickens screaming and Clover whinnying in terror. He bolted upright, grabbing his hunting knife from beside the bed. Grusha was already on her feet, her long knife in hand. "Wolves," she said grimly. "A large pack from the sound of it." They burst out into the freezing night. The moon was nearly full, turning the snow-covered landscape into something from a dream, but there was nothing dreamlike about the scene at the barn. Half a dozen wolves had torn through the chicken coop and were now circling Clover, who was kicking and bucking in his pen, wild with fear. Grusha did not hesitate. She charged straight at the wolves, roaring a battle cry that made Flint's blood run cold. The wolves scattered at her approach, but only for a moment. They were hungry, desperate, and they outnumbered her 6-1. Flint ran to her side, knife ready. One of the wolves lunged at Grusha, and she caught it mid-leap, throwing it aside with her bare hands. Another went for Flint, and he slashed at it, catching it across the muzzle. It yelped and retreated. The fight was chaos. Snapping jaws, snarls, the crunch of snow under feet and paws. Grusha fought like a demon, her knife flashing in the moonlight, but there were too many of them. A wolf got past their defenses and clamped its jaws around Flint's leg. He cried out in pain, stabbing down at it. The wolf released him, but the damage was done. He could feel blood soaking through his trousers, hot against his skin. "Flint!" Grusha's voice was raw with fear and fury. She grabbed a burning brand from the fire pit they used for outdoor cooking and swung it like a weapon. The flames and her ferocious assault were too much for the wolves. They broke and ran, disappearing into the forest. Grusha dropped the brand and fell to her knees beside Flint. "How bad is it?" "I have had worse," Flint lied through gritted teeth. The pain was excruciating, spreading up his leg in waves. Grusha tore away his trouser leg and examined the wound by moonlight. "Deep, very deep. We need to stop the bleeding." She half carried him back to the cabin, her strength the only thing keeping him upright. Inside, she laid him on the bed and built up the fire until the room was blazing hot. Then she cleaned the wound with water heated in the kettle, her hands gentle despite their size. "This will hurt," she warned. "Just do it." She pressed a cloth soaked in whiskey against the wound, and Flint nearly blacked out from the pain. He must have cried out because suddenly Grusha's hand was in his, gripping tight. "I am sorry," she said. "I am so sorry. I should have protected you better." "Not your fault," Flint managed. "You saved my life, saved Clover and the chickens too. I could have lost you." Her voice broke. "I could have lost you, Flint." Through the haze of pain, Flint saw tears in her eyes. Grusha, who was so strong, so stoic, was crying for him. "I am all right," he said. "I am here. I am not going anywhere." She bandaged the wound with shaking hands, then sat beside the bed, still holding his hand. "Rest now. I will keep watch." "Grusha." "Yes, thank you for everything." She squeezed his hand. "Sleep, Flint. I will be here when you wake." He drifted off with that promise ringing in his ears. Flint's recovery was slow. The wound had been bad, worse than he wanted to admit. Infection set in on the second day, bringing fever and delirium. He drifted in and out of consciousness. dimly aware of Grusha changing his bandages, forcing him to drink water and eat broth, placing cool cloths on his forehead. In his lucid moments, he would find her sitting beside the bed, carving to keep her hands busy. Her face was drawn with worry, her eyes shadowed by lack of sleep. "You should rest," he told her once. "I will rest when you are better," she replied, not looking up from her work, stubborn. "Takes one to know one." The fever broke on the 5th day. Flint woke feeling weak, but clear-headed for the first time in days. Grusha was asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head tilted back at an uncomfortable angle, a half-finished carving in her lap. He watched her sleep, this fierce, beautiful woman who had nursed him through the worst of his illness. She looked different in sleep, younger somehow, the hard edges of her face softened. He wanted to reach out and touch her cheek, to smooth away the worry lines between her brows. As if sensing his gaze, Grusha's eyes opened. For a moment she looked disoriented. Then she focused on him and her expression transformed with relief. "Your fever broke," she said. "Seems like it." She reached out and pressed her palm to his forehead, checking his temperature. Her hand lingered there for a moment longer than necessary. "How do you feel?" "Like I was chewed on by a wolf and then trampled by a horse, but alive." "That is good enough for now." Grusha stood and stretched, her back popping audibly. "I will make you something to eat. You need to rebuild your strength." Over the next few weeks, Flint slowly recovered. The wound healed cleanly, though it left a wicked scar. Grusha barely let him lift a finger, insisting on doing all the work herself. He argued with her about it, told her she was being overprotective, but she would not budge. "You took care of me when I had nowhere to go," she said. "Now I take care of you. This is how it works." As his strength returned, Flint became increasingly aware of how much Grusha's presence meant to him. How empty the cabin felt when she was outside working. How much he looked forward to their evening conversations. How right it felt to have her there beside him. He was completely, irrevocably in love with her. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Spring came slowly, grudgingly. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and the first green shoots of new growth. The chickens began laying again, and Clover became friskier with the warmer weather. The whole world seemed to be waking up from a long sleep. Flint's leg had healed enough for him to walk without a limp, though it still ached in cold weather. He and Grusha worked together to prepare the fields for planting, turning the soil, removing rocks, planning what crops would go where. They worked well together, each anticipating the other's movements, communicating as much through gestures and glances as through words. It felt natural, easy, like they had been doing this for years instead of months. One evening in early April, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled of earth and growing things. "Beautiful," Grusha said softly. "Yes," Flint agreed, though he was not looking at the sky, he was looking at her. She turned and caught him staring. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. Flint's heart was pounding so hard he was certain she could hear it. "Grusha," he began, then stopped, not sure how to continue. "Yes, I need to tell you something. I have needed to tell you for a while now, but I was afraid. Afraid of ruining what we have, afraid of making you uncomfortable, afraid of 100 different things. But I cannot keep it inside anymore." Grusha's expression was carefully neutral. "What is it?" Flint took a deep breath. "I love you. I am in love with you, Grusha. I know it is complicated and probably foolish and maybe even impossible, but it is the truth. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I needed you to know." The silence that followed was the longest of Flint's life. He watched Grusha's face, trying to read her reaction, but she had gone very still. "You love me," she said finally, her voice strange. "Yes." "Why?" The question surprised him. Why? Because you are brave and kind and strong. Because you make me laugh. Because you see the world in a way no one else does. Because when I am with you, I feel less alone than I have ever felt in my life. Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore. Grusha stood abruptly and walked to the edge of the porch. She stood with her back to him, her shoulders rigid. "This is a mistake, Flint." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I am sorry, I should not have said anything. Please just forget I mentioned it. We can go back to how things were." "No." She turned to face him and he was shocked to see tears streaming down her face. "No, we cannot. Because I love you too, and that is a mistake. I am an orc. You are human. Our peoples hate each other. There is no future for us, Flint, no matter how much we might want there to be." "Why not?" Flint stood, ignoring the twinge in his leg. "Why can there not be a future? We are both free. We have this farm, we have each other. Why is that not enough?" "Because the world will not let us have peace," Grusha said, her voice breaking. "If your neighbors found out, if anyone from the settlement discovered you were harboring an orc, they would come for you. They would call you a traitor. And my people, if they knew I had fallen in love with a human, they would kill us both without hesitation. There is no place in this world for what we feel." "Then we make a place," Flint said fiercely. "We are already outcasts, both of us. We have already chosen to live outside the expectations of our peoples. Why stop now? Because I cannot bear to see you hurt because of me. I cannot bear to be the reason you lose everything." Flint crossed the distance between them and took her hands in his. "You are not the reason I would lose anything. You are the reason I have gained everything. Before you came, I was just existing, going through the motions. You gave me a reason to live, Grusha. You gave me joy and purpose and hope. Do not take that away now, Flint." She was sobbing now, tears falling freely. "What if this all falls apart? What if we are discovered? What if our love brings nothing but pain? Then at least we will have had this. At least we will have known what it is to be loved and to love in return. Is that not worth the risk?" Grusha looked at him, her amber eyes searching his face. Then slowly she nodded. "You are right. You are a fool, but you are right." She kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was fierce and desperate and full of all the longing they had both been holding back for months. Flint wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and she lifted him off his feet in her enthusiasm. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Flint could not stop smiling. "So we are doing this?" he asked. "We are really doing this. We are really doing this," Grusha confirmed. Then she laughed, a sound of pure joy. "We are complete idiots, but yes, we are doing this." They spent that night talking about the future, making plans, dreaming of possibilities. They would keep to themselves as much as possible, avoid drawing attention. If anyone did come around asking questions, they would say Grusha was a farmhand, nothing more. It was not a perfect plan, but it was a start. "I want to marry you," Flint said as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows. "I know we cannot do it officially, not in a way that anyone would recognize. But in our hearts, in the eyes of whatever gods might be listening, I want you to be my wife." Grusha's eyes glistened with fresh tears, but these were happy tears. "And I want you to be my husband. Yes, Flint O'Malley. Yes to all of it." They were married at sunrise on the first day of May, standing in the field they had planted together. There was no priest, no witnesses save the chickens and Clover. Flint had no ring to offer, but Grusha had carved 2 matching bands from a piece of oak, simple but beautiful. They spoke their vows to each other, promises of love and loyalty, of partnership through whatever trials might come. When Flint slipped the wooden ring onto Grusha's finger, his hands were shaking with emotion. "I promise to stand by you," he said. "To see you, to value you, to love you for all of my days." "I promise to protect you," Grusha said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. to honor you, to cherish you, to build a life with you that is worthy of the love we share." They sealed their vows with a kiss as the sun rose behind them, painting the world gold. The summer that followed was the happiest of Flint's life. He and Grusha worked the farm together, tending crops and animals, making improvements and repairs. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, Grusha carving while Flint read aloud from the few books he owned. Sometimes they would dance to music only they could hear, swaying together under the stars. Grusha would rest her head on Flint's shoulder despite being taller, and he would hold her close and think that he had never known such contentment was possible. Their crops thrived. The weather was good, the soil rich, and their hard work paid off in abundance. By late summer, they had more vegetables than they could possibly eat themselves. Flint made a trip to the settlement to sell the surplus, a journey he had been dreading. "Be careful," Grusha told him as he loaded the wagon. "Do not give them any reason to wonder about you." "I will be back before you know it," Flint promised. The settlement was much as he remembered, a collection of rough buildings clustered around a central square. He sold his produce quickly, and for a fair price, grateful that no one asked too many questions about how a lone farmer had managed to grow so much. He was loading his empty wagon, preparing to leave, when he heard a familiar voice. "Flint O'Malley. Been a while." Flint turned to see Jed Harker, a man who had been a friend of his father's. Jed was in his 60s now, weathered and grizzled but still sharp-eyed. "Mr. Harker, good to see you." "You too, boy. Farm treating you well?" "Well enough." Jed looked at the empty crates in the wagon. "Sold a lot of produce. That is impressive for a single man working alone." Flint's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his expression neutral. "I have been working hard. The land is good." "That it is." Jed's gaze was penetrating. "You sure you are out there all alone, no hired help?" "Why would you think otherwise? Just seems like an awful lot of work for one person. And I heard tell from a trapper who was out your way that he saw smoke from 2 fires at your place. Your cabin and your barn." Flint forced a laugh. "The trapper must have been seeing things. Or maybe he saw me working late and got confused." Jed studied him for a long moment. "Maybe. Just be careful, Flint. Strange times we are living in. Orc war bands have been spotted not far from here. Folks are nervous. If anyone thought you were fraternizing with the enemy, well, it would not go well for you." "I appreciate the concern, Mr. Harker, but I can assure you there are no orcs on my property." It was technically true. Grusha was on his property, but she was his wife, not just an orc. The distinction mattered to him, even if it would not matter to anyone else. Jed nodded slowly. "All right then. You take care of yourself, boy. Your father would have wanted you safe." Flint drove the wagon home with his stomach in knots. Jed's warning had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. If people were already suspicious, it was only a matter of time before someone came to investigate. He found Grusha in the garden, pulling weeds. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" He told her about the conversation with Jed, about the trapper who had seen smoke from both buildings, about the warning. Grusha listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. "We need to be more careful," she said when he finished. "No fires in the barn. I will make sure any smoke from the cabin looks like it is coming from one person's activities." "Maybe we should leave," Flint said. "Go somewhere more remote, somewhere no one knows us. And leave the farm you built, the life you made." Grusha shook her head. "No, we stay. We are careful, but we stay. This is our home, Flint. We do not let fear drive us from it." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I am afraid, Grusha, not for me but for you, if they found out, if they came for you." "Then we will face it together," she said firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." August gave way to September and the harvest was in full swing. Flint and Grusha worked from dawn to dusk, bringing in wheat and corn, digging up potatoes and turnips, picking apples from the small orchard. It was back-breaking work, but satisfying. One afternoon, as they were loading sacks of grain into the barn, they heard the sound of horses approaching. Flint's blood went cold. Visitors were rare this far out, and given the current climate, rarely good news. "Hide," he told Grusha. "No, I will not leave you to face whatever this is alone." "Please, Grusha, just until we know what they want." Reluctantly, she disappeared into the forest. Flint walked out to meet the riders, his heart pounding. There were 3 of them, all men from the settlement. Flint recognized 2 of them, Jed Harker and a man named Silas Donovan. The third was younger, maybe Flint's age, with a hard face and suspicious eyes. "Mr. Harker," Flint said, keeping his voice steady. "What brings you out this way?" Jed looked uncomfortable. "Flint, this is Deputy Marshal Kane from the territorial government. He is investigating reports of orc activity in the area." The young man, Kane, dismounted and approached Flint with a swagger that set his teeth on edge. "We have had multiple sightings of a lone orc in these parts. Big, wearing leather armor, carrying a knife." "Any chance you have seen anything like that?" "No, sir," Flint lied. "I stay pretty close to the farm, do not venture into the forest much." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look around, just to be sure?" Every instinct screamed at Flint to refuse, but that would only make them more suspicious. "Help yourself, though I am not sure what you expect to find." The 3 men dismounted and began searching the property. Flint followed them, his mind racing. Grusha had hidden in the forest, but what if they found evidence of her? Her clothing in the cabin, her carving tools, the wooden rings they wore. He had tucked his ring into his pocket before the men arrived, but had Grusha remembered to do the same? Kane poked around the barn, examined the cabin, walked through the fields. He found nothing incriminating, but his suspicion did not seem to diminish. "You live here all alone?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Pretty big harvest for one man. I work hard." "Uh-huh." Kane looked around the property with narrowed eyes. "You know, it is funny. I heard tell that someone out this way has been seen talking to an orc, friendly-like." Flint's mouth went dry. "I do not know what you heard, but it is not true. I would never consort with orcs." "Never said it was you." Kane smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "But interesting that you assumed I was talking about you." Silas Donovan, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Come on, Kane. The boy is clean. Let us move on. In a minute." Kane walked over to the cabin and peered through the window. "You mind if I go inside? Just want to be thorough." Flint's heart was racing so fast he felt dizzy. "Of course." He led Kane into the cabin, praying that Grusha had not left anything obvious lying around. The deputy marshal walked through the small space slowly, examining everything. His gaze lingered on the collection of carved animals on the mantel. "These are well made," he said. "Where did you get them?" "I carved them myself," Flint said. "In the evenings, helps pass the time. You are quite talented. Thank you." Kane picked up one of the carvings, a rabbit, and turned it over in his hands. "Funny thing, though, I am from the capital and I have seen work like this before. Orc work. They have a very distinctive style." Flint's palms were sweating. "I learned from a book." "Maybe the book had orc designs in it." "Maybe." Kane set the rabbit down and turned to face Flint directly. "Let me be straight with you, O'Malley. I think you are hiding something. I do not know what yet, but I will find out. And when I do, if you are collaborating with orcs in any way, you will hang. Do you understand me?" "I understand," Flint said quietly. "But you are wrong. I am not hiding anything." Kane stared at him for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "We will see. Come on, boys, we are done here." The 3 men mounted up and rode away. Flint stood watching until they disappeared from view, then his legs gave out and he sat down hard on the porch steps. Grusha emerged from the forest a few minutes later, moving cautiously. Are they gone? Yes. But Grusha, they know. Maybe not for certain, but they suspect. She sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then what do we do? I do not know. Flint put his head in his hands. I do not know. They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Everything they had built, everything they had found together was balanced on a knife's edge. We could run, Grusha said finally. Leave tonight. Head north, maybe, into the wilderness. Find somewhere so remote no one would ever find us. And leave the farm, leave everything we have worked for. Better to lose the farm than our lives. Flint knew she was right, but the thought of abandoning his home, his father's legacy, made his chest ache. This land was all he had, all he knew. Let me think about it, he said. Just give me a day to think. That night, Flint lay awake staring at the ceiling. Grusha was asleep beside him, her breathing deep and even. He wanted to protect her, wanted to keep her safe no matter the cost. But he also wanted to fight for their right to exist, to love, to simply be. Why should they have to run? Why should their love be a crime? He thought about his father, about the stories of the border wars, about the hatred and violence that had defined generations. Was that all there could ever be? Endless cycles of revenge and bloodshed? Or could two people, one human and one orc, prove that another way was possible? In the morning, he told Grusha his decision. We stay. We do not hide anymore, but we do not run either. We live our lives as openly as we can, and if anyone has a problem with it, we face it head on. Grusha looked at him like he had lost his mind. Flint, they will kill us. Maybe, or maybe, just maybe, some people will see what we have and realize that orcs and humans do not have to be enemies. It is a long shot, I know, but I am tired of living in fear. I am tired of pretending. I love you, Grusha. I want the whole world to know it. She was quiet for a long time. Then slowly she smiled. You are either the bravest man I have ever met or the most foolish, possibly both. Definitely both. She kissed him, soft and sweet. All right, we stay. We face whatever comes together. The next time Flint went to the settlement, he did not go alone. Grusha rode beside him on Clover, her head held high. The looks they received as they entered the central square ranged from shocked to horrified to outraged. Flint brought the wagon to a stop and climbed down. Grusha followed, standing at his shoulder. The crowd that had been going about their business had fallen silent, everyone staring. Jed Harker pushed through the crowd, his face pale. Flint, what in blazes do you think you are doing? I am bringing my produce to market, same as always, Flint said calmly, and I brought my wife. The word wife sent a ripple through the crowd. Someone gasped, someone else cursed. Your wife, Jed's voice was strangled. Boy, she is an orc, her name is Grusha. And yes, she is my wife. We have been living together on my farm since last fall. She is a good person, a hard worker, and the love of my life. Deputy Marshal Kane appeared from one of the buildings, his hand on his pistol. O'Malley, step away from the orc, now. No, Flint said simply. That was not a request. I do not care. Flint positioned himself between Kane and Grusha. She has done nothing wrong, neither have I. We are married. We work a farm. We hurt no one. Why should that be a crime? Because she is an orc, someone in the crowd yelled. They are monsters. She is not a monster, Flint said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. She is a person. She thinks and feels and dreams just like any of you. She has shown me nothing but kindness and loyalty. She saved my life when wolves attacked my farm. She worked alongside me through the hardest winter I have ever known. She is better than most humans I have met. You are a traitor, Kane spat, collaborating with the enemy. The war has been over for 20 years. Flint shot back. How long are we going to keep fighting? How many more generations have to die before we try something different? Grusha put a hand on his shoulder. Flint, it is all right. We tried. Let us go home. No, he covered her hand with his. I am not done. He turned back to the crowd, looking at each face in turn. I know what you have been taught. I was taught the same things. Orcs are evil. Orcs are savages. They are less than human. But it is not true. At least not about Grusha, and if not about her, then maybe not about all orcs. Maybe we have been wrong. Maybe there is another way. Jed Harker's expression had softened slightly. Flint, even if what you say is true about this one orc, you cannot expect people to just accept this. There has been too much blood, too much pain. I know, but someone has to be first. Someone has to try to bridge the gap. Why not us? The crowd was murmuring now, people arguing with each other in low voices. Flint could see the fear and anger on most faces, but here and there he saw something else. Uncertainty, curiosity, maybe even hope. Then a woman pushed through the crowd. She was middle-aged, wearing a faded dress and an apron. Flint recognized her as Margaret Holloway, whose husband had died in the border wars. She walked right up to Grusha and looked up at her. You are an orc. Yes, Grusha said quietly. My husband was killed by orcs. Left me with 3 children to raise alone. I am sorry for your loss. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Did you kill my husband? No, I was a child when the last battle was fought. I have never killed a human. But your people did. Yes, and your people killed many of mine. My mother was killed by human raiders when I was young. The pain of loss is something we share, I think. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I do not know if I can forgive. I do not know if I am ready for that. I do not ask for forgiveness, Grusha said gently. Only for a chance. A chance to prove that I am more than the worst things my people have done. The 2 women stared at each other. Then, slowly, Margaret nodded. A chance. I can give you that much. She turned to the crowd. The war took my husband from me. It took fathers and sons and brothers from all of us. But maybe Flint is right. Maybe it is time to try something different. Not everyone agreed. There was still anger, still resistance. But Margaret's words had opened a door, however slightly. Deputy Marshal Kane was not convinced. This is not over, O'Malley. The law is the law, and you are in violation. I will be reporting this to my superiors. You do what you have to do, Flint said. But I am not changing my mind. Grusha is my wife, and I will stand by her no matter what. He and Grusha sold their produce, though many people refused to buy from them. Those who did were quiet about it, taking their purchases quickly and avoiding eye contact. But it was a start. As they prepared to leave, Margaret Holloway approached the wagon one more time. You have courage, both of you. More than I have, certainly. I hope you find the peace you are looking for. Thank you, Flint said. That means more than you know. The ride back to the farm was quiet. Both Flint and Grusha were exhausted, emotionally drained by the confrontation. But there was also a strange sense of relief. They had done it. They had stopped hiding. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing we have ever done, Grusha said as the farm came into view. Probably stupid, Flint admitted, but I am glad we did it. So am I. She looked at him, her amber eyes warm. I love you, Flint O'Malley. You impossible, stubborn, wonderful man. I love you too. In the weeks that followed, they waited for the other shoe to drop, for soldiers to come and arrest them, for vigilantes to burn their farm, but nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, and still they were left alone. Then one morning in late October, they woke to find a wagon parked near their barn. It was loaded with lumber, tools, and sacks of grain. A note was attached to the wagon, written in a careful hand. For the newlyweds, may your farm prosper. M.H. Grusha read the note, and her eyes filled with tears. She sent us gifts. Not just her, Flint said, examining the wagon more closely. Look at all this. This had to come from multiple people. The whole settlement, maybe. It was a start. Not acceptance exactly, but a willingness to try. To give them a chance. More gifts arrived over the coming weeks. A new milk cow from one family, chickens from another. Someone left a stack of warm blankets on their porch with no note at all, and one day Jed Harker rode up to the farm himself. He dismounted slowly, looking older than Flint remembered. "Mr. Harker," Flint said, "this is a surprise." "Reckon it is." Jed looked at Grusha, who was standing in the doorway of the cabin. "Madam," Grusha nodded, "Mr. Harker." "I came to apologize," Jed said, "and to bring you this." He pulled a rolled parchment from his saddlebag and handed it to Flint. "It is a petition. Folks from the settlement signed it, asking the territorial government not to prosecute you. Not everyone signed, mind you, but enough did." Flint unrolled the parchment and stared at the names. Dozens of them. Margaret Holloway's name was first, written large and bold, but there were others too. Farmers, shopkeepers, people he had known his whole life. "I do not know what to say," Flint managed. "Do not say anything. Just keep doing what you are doing. Show people that this can work." Jed looked at Grusha again. "You take care of him, you hear? He is a good man, and good men are hard to find." "I will," Grusha promised. "You have my word." Jed nodded, then climbed back on his horse. As he rode away, Flint and Grusha stood together, the petition held between them. "Do you think it will be enough?" Grusha asked. "To protect us?" "I do not know, but it is more than we had yesterday." Winter came again, but this time they faced it without fear. They had support now, tentative and fragile but real. The settlement had not fully accepted them, but they were no longer alone. On the first day of December, as snow began to fall, Grusha told Flint she was pregnant. He stared at her, certain he had misheard. "You are what?" "Pregnant. We are going to have a child." Flint sat down hard, his legs suddenly weak. "A child. We are going to have a child." "Are you all right?" Grusha asked, sounding worried. "All right. Grusha, I am better than all right. I am terrified and thrilled and I cannot breathe, but yes, I am all right." He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as he dared. "We are going to be parents," she laughed, the sound joyful and free. "Yes, we are." The pregnancy was not easy. Grusha was sick for the first few months and Flint worried constantly. But she was strong, resilient, and as spring approached she began to bloom. Word of the pregnancy spread to the settlement. Some people were horrified, calling the child an abomination. But others, led by Margaret Holloway, organized a group to help. They brought supplies, baby clothes, advice. Margaret herself came to visit, bringing her daughter, a young woman named Sarah. "I have delivered many babies," Margaret told them. "I will be here when your time comes if you want me." "Thank you," Grusha said, tears in her eyes. "Yes, please." The baby was born on a warm day in June, just over a year since the bull moose had charged and changed everything. It was a difficult birth, long and painful, but Margaret and Sarah were there, helping Grusha through each contraction. When Flint finally heard the baby's first cry, he thought his heart might burst from his chest. "It is a boy," Margaret announced, placing the squalling infant in Grusha's arms. "A healthy, beautiful boy." Flint looked down at his son and felt the world shift. The baby had Grusha's green skin and his dark hair. His ears were slightly pointed, and he had the tiniest nubs of tusks just visible in his mouth. He was perfect. "Hello, little one," Grusha whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We have waited so long to meet you. What should we name him?" Flint asked. Grusha looked up at him, her amber eyes shining. "I was thinking Thomas. It was my grandfather's name. He was a wise man, a peacemaker. It would be fitting." "Thomas." Flint tested the name, then smiled. "Thomas O'Malley, I love it." They spent the rest of the day in a happy daze, passing little Thomas back and forth. marveling at his tiny fingers and toes. Margaret and Sarah stayed for a few hours, making sure both mother and baby were doing well before heading back to the settlement. "We will tell everyone the good news," Margaret said before she left. "And do not worry, there are more people on your side than you might think." As the sun set, Flint sat on the porch holding his son while Grusha rested inside. He looked out over the farm, the fields he had planted, the life he had built. A year ago he had been alone, going through the motions, existing but not really living. Now he had everything. A wife he loved beyond measure. A son who represented hope for the future. A community that was slowly, painfully, learning to accept them. It was not perfect. There would still be challenges, still be people who would never accept an orc and human together. But they had proven it was possible. They had shown that love could bridge even the deepest divides. Thomas stirred in his arms, making a small sound. Flint looked down at his son's face and felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I promise you," he whispered, "I will make this world a better place for you. You will grow up knowing love, not hate. You will know peace, not war. And you will never, ever doubt that you are wanted and cherished." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused and dark. Flint could have sworn he saw understanding there, some deep knowledge that transcended words. Grusha appeared in the doorway, looking tired but radiant. "Is he sleeping?" "Wide awake. I think he wants to see his mother." She came and sat beside him, and they sat together as a family, watching the stars come out one by one. "Are you happy?" Grusha asked softly. Flint thought about the question. Happy seemed too small a word for what he felt. He was grateful, blessed, complete. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly the people he was supposed to be with. "More than I ever thought possible," he said. "You, more than words can say." They sat in comfortable silence, their son between them, the future stretching out unknown but no longer frightening. The farm prospered over the next few years. Word of their success spread, and slowly, cautiously, other mixed couples began to emerge. An orc man and a human woman in a settlement to the north. A human man and an orc woman in a village to the east. They were few and far between, but they existed, proof that change was possible. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy. He had his mother's strength and his father's kindness. The children in the settlement were wary of him at first, but he won them over with his infectious laugh and generous spirit. By the time he was 5, he had more friends than Flint could count. One day, when Thomas was 7, a delegation arrived at the farm. It consisted of representatives from both human settlements and orc clans, come to discuss the possibility of a formal peace treaty. They had chosen Flint and Grusha's farm as neutral ground, a symbol of what could be achieved. The negotiations lasted for weeks. There were arguments, setbacks, moments when it seemed the whole thing would fall apart. But slowly, painfully, progress was made. Representatives from both sides talked, really talked, many for the first time. Grusha served as a translator and mediator, her unique position giving her insight into both cultures. Flint provided hospitality, keeping everyone fed and housed. And Thomas, in his innocent way, did more than anyone to bridge the gap. He would play with the children of both orc and human delegates, making no distinction between them. His mere existence proved that the two peoples were not so different after all. When the treaty was finally signed, it was on Flint and Grusha's kitchen table. The document declared an official end to hostilities, established trade agreements, and created a framework for resolving disputes peacefully. It was not perfect. There were still hardliners on both sides who would never accept peace. But it was a start, a foundation that future generations could build on. At the signing ceremony, the lead human negotiator, a silver-haired woman named Ambassador Reeves, turned to Flint and Grusha. "You two started something remarkable," she said. "When you chose love over fear, you changed the course of history. I hope you know that." Flint looked at Grusha, at Thomas playing in the corner, at the assembled delegates from two peoples who had been enemies for so long. "We just wanted to be together," he said. "Everything else happened because other people chose hope too." "Nevertheless," Ambassador Reeves said, "you will be remembered, the human and the orc who loved each other enough to change the world." Years passed. Thomas grew into a young man, strong and wise like his mother, kind and stubborn like his father. He became a teacher, dedicated to educating both orc and human children together, showing them that cooperation was not only possible but beneficial. Flint and Grusha grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, tempered by trials and sweetened by shared joys. They added on to the cabin to accommodate visiting grandchildren when Thomas married and started his own family. His wife was human, a kind woman named Emma who loved him for exactly who he was. Their children were another generation of hope, another step toward a truly integrated world. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Flint and Grusha sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had so many times before. Their hands were clasped together, wooden rings worn smooth with age still on their fingers. "You remember the day we met?" Flint asked. "The bull moose," Grusha said with a smile. "You stood in front of a charging moose for me. I thought you were insane." I am." He squeezed her hand. "But it was the best decision I ever made, mine too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. In the distance, they could hear Thomas's children playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. "We did all right, did we not?" Flint said. "With our life together." Grusha turned to look at him, her amber eyes as bright as the day they had met. "We did better than all right, my love. We did something beautiful." And as the sun set on another day, Flint O'Malley and Grusha sat together. Two people from different worlds who had found each other and, in doing so, had helped heal the divide between their peoples. Their love had not solved every problem or erased every prejudice. But it had proven that change was possible, that hope could triumph over hate, and that, in the end, was everything. The bull moose that had brought them together was long gone, likely dead of old age. But its legacy lived on in the family it had inadvertently created, in the peace that had blossomed from one human's choice to stand between danger and a stranger, in the world that Thomas and his children would inherit. It was a world still imperfect, still struggling, still learning. But it was a world where an orc and a human could love each other openly, could build a life together, could raise a family and grow old in peace, and that made all the difference.